It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My CEO guest today is Sean Dunn. Sean loves Jesus with all his heart and has been serving him in full-time ministry for the past 32 years. As the founder and president of Groundwire, Sean has combined his calling as an evangelist with his gifting as an innovative entrepreneur. He is focused on creatively and effectively communicating God's word, love, and purpose to every student. Through his leadership, Groundwire has grown to one of the most influential and efficient evangelistic outreaches in the U.S., seeing tens of thousands of millennials place their trust in Jesus every year. Sean Dunn, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you, Brant.
Great to have you here, Sean. And we always kind of talk a little bit about the early years and kind of how things get started. I'm so tickled that you've agreed to be on our show. And of course, very excited to hear more about Groundwire. We've had a couple of previous discussions about the work you're doing, and it's just so innovative and so exciting. But let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and, what your early family life was like.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a Christian home in Spokane, Washington, and loved the Lord from a young age. The way I described it, though, is I was a bored, apathetic Christian kid.
I know the type personally.
I knew all the answers, and I loved God. I just didn't know how to serve Him sometimes, and I didn't know how to overcome and walk in some of the things that God wanted me to. And so, that was my journey. I wasn't, I didn't get saved out of the heathen world. I got saved because I was a good Christian sinner.
Yeah. That sounds familiar. That's a very common story.
Yeah.
Did your mom and dad grow up in the church? And
they did.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters?
I have one brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
And what kind of inspirations, were they for you growing up, your brother and or your parents?
They're great people, and very godly, very mature, and they were not pastors. My dad was just he was in the business marketplace and loved the Lord and acted out of that, and so it was a little different, a little shocking when I sensed a very, very strong and very real call to vocational ministry when I was 14 years old.
Wow. Is that when you came to Christ?
No, I came to Christ at a young age, 6 years old, but it was 14, 15, 16 where I was really kind of figuring out the lordship issues and all those things. And again, God gave me a mission statement at 14 years old. And if you have a mission statement at 14, you're weird. And I was different.
What was that mission statement, Sean?
I was sitting in a service and I felt like the Lord whispered into my heart. It was not the preacher. Don't remember what he said, but I just remember feeling like the Lord whispered in my heart, contend for a generation. And so that's kind of been my marching orders ever since.
Yeah. Fantastic. Any other early inspirations in your childhood? Other people, pastors, teachers, coaches?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I had my youth pastor, my pastor were very, people that I put on a pedestal and longed to be like them and longed to please them and just godly people but it was really the passion for the Lord that really drew me to them. You could tell they authentically cared about Him. Right. And you don't see that as often as you should.
No, you don't. Were you a good student in school?
I was smart enough to get by, but not disciplined enough to excel.
Good sum up. What kind of things did you do outside of class? Obviously, you're involved in your church, but any sports, music, theater?
Yeah, no, I was my obsession. If I had idols in my life, they wore sports jerseys.
Okay.
And
any particular sports or particular team?
Yeah, no, basketball was kind of my obsession, and kind of convinced myself that I had a shot. And then I don't know at what age I looked in the mirror and realized, that's probably not going to happen for me.
Did you keep kind of that height thing in the doorway, right, where you were measuring yourself?
Yeah, but I did. I grew up in the same hometown that John Stockton did, and I was kind of built like him. So that gave me more hope than. Yeah. But I knew that I was called to ministry, and that wasn't what the Lord had for me, but I did get to play a little bit in college and have some fun there. So cool. So enjoyed that.
Great. Yeah. Where'd you go to college?
Duke. No, I'm kidding.
Great.
No,
I'm
kidding.
I'm kidding. You followed Duke, I'm sure, very closely.
Yeah. Well, my joke is I've always liked Duke because they went out and recruited for years. They recruited short white guys that weren't the best, but they worked harder. And so I really could relate to that because that was kind of my game.
What's not to like about a Blue Devil, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's as Christian as they come.
What kind of entrepreneurial things, if any, did you do growing up, Sean?
I'm not sure that kind of hit me until later. I really didn't do anything from the entrepreneurial space. It's, I knew that I was focused on reaching young people with the gospel. The only model that was out there at the time was local church. And so that's what I assumed I would do my whole life. Right. I did that, and I served denominationally, ran 8 states for a few years, and then, started to travel full time as a speaker and an author. And the entrepreneurial thing really hit when God began to get my attention about the model of ministry that I was running with versus the need that was out there.
I see. Right. So what were the events that you were involved with? Was there a church program that was doing outreach to young people? And did you kind of latch onto that, or did you kind of take a step in your own direction as it related to the ministry, to the generation, as you said?
Yeah, well, growing up, we went street witnessing every Monday night. We had youth group every Wednesday night. We went to nursing homes and prayed for old people every Friday night. So was always involved in ministry. And I'm not sure if your question was once I got later in life, or if
I meant more as a kid. When you were involved in the church at 14 and older. Yeah. Were the programs more of an organized nature, or were there things that you did that were unique?
No, I was a leader in the youth ministry, and so I started teaching junior high Sunday school when I was a sophomore in high school. Cool. And just tried to serve wherever I could, and not too many things outside the box. It was just filling in wherever I was asked.
Right. Awesome. And any early jobs at all, things that helped to support you either during the high school years or when you went into college that were outside of the ministry?
Well, of course. I worked at the local Greasy Spoon.
Flipping burgers, waiting tables.
It was called Dick's Hamburgers. Okay. It is famous in Spokane. Yeah. Their motto is "Buy the burger by the bagful."
What's that mean?
We went through, we cooked them fast, and they were cheap. And so people would come and just buy the bagful.
Oh my gosh. That's great. Kind of like a White Castle type of experience.
Well, I don't care who you are. You grow up and there's comfort food in your life. Yep. And so you convince yourself that it's better than everybody else's. So I would say much, much better than White Castle.
I love it. And you went to college.
I did.
And was that something that you paid for? Parents helped you out? Scholarships?
Worked through. Parents helped. A little bit of scholarship. Little bit of everything.
Still at the Greasy Spoon, or did you do other types of work?
No, I went to college in Northern Cal, so Dick's Hamburgers did not follow me down there. So,
well, you could have started a franchise down there, but there's probably plenty of opportunities. Did you go to Berkeley, or where were you?
No, I went to a Bible college, Bethany Bible College in Santa Cruz, California.
Yeah, so beautiful area there.
Yeah.
And so, what kind of work did you do while you were in college?
I had a weird situation. So before I went down, my youth pastor pulled me aside and he said, "Do not be one of those people who wastes 4 years. You're going to learn more from doing than by lecture." So he said, don't sleep through the Sundays. And so I slept my first week because mom wasn't there to tell me to get out of bed. But the second week I got out of bed and I went to a church, and they found out that I was in the area studying for youth ministry. And the pastor immediately approached me and said, could we take you out to lunch? And over lunch, they said, we are in the process of hiring a youth pastor, but it's going to be 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
Could we hire you in the interim? Which, back then I thought, wow, they recognized God's gift on my life. Now I'm looking at it and thinking, what were they thinking?
Well, that's awesome. So you took the job.
I did. And so I've been in full-time vocational ministry serving youth and young adult for, since I was 18.
That's great. And you stayed attached to that church during the full time you were in Santa Cruz?
No, I stayed there for 6 or 8 months till they hired somebody, went to another church, kind of a similar scenario, just an interim. And then after about a year and a half, I landed somewhere that I stayed for a couple of years. And I came to Colorado, and that's when the longevity kicked in.
Yeah. Awesome. So did you get a degree in biblical studies? Was it, a divinity degree? I guess that's more of a master's, right? So what was it that you studied?
Would you judge me if I told you I didn't get a degree?
I would not, nor would our audience. Yeah. In fact, I would say about a third of all the CEOs we've had on the program haven't received their degree. Yeah. Sometimes that's a plus, not a minus.
Yeah. No, I was going to college I had a pastoral emphasis or pastoral degree with an emphasis in youth ministry. And the Lord opened a door for me to take a church in Colorado. And I told him, I'll go back if you want me to, but please don't make me go back.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, I just wanted to go to Bible college. When I was in Bible college, I just wanted to do ministry.
Just get started.
Right? Yeah. And so that's kind of my journey. And the Lord never asked me to go back. And I've had people tell me even as recently as 1 or 2 years ago that I need to go back and get a degree and get a master's before God can really allow me to fulfill my potential. But I believe that
I won't judge you on that, because I think you're doing wonderful things.
Well, thank you. Well, it's just I'm convinced that there is no one path for everybody.
That's right.
God says to some people, hey, if you go this route, I'm going to bless it. But if you go the route that everybody else is going, you're not going to be fruitful. Yeah. So you really have to walk in that communion and that unity with the Lord to really know what he's calling you to do.
So what was that opportunity that came up in Colorado, and how far were you into your studies when that happened?
I probably have 2 semesters left, but it was a church opened up. They were looking for a youth pastor, and I had been traveling with a speaker during the summer and ran across the church. And the pastor ended up hiring me and saying, hey, we'd love to have you come. And so it was a great place. I landed in Castle Rock, Colorado. I was not only the first youth pastor in the church, I was the first youth pastor in the community.
Wow, you're kidding. So really no youth pastor at all in any of the other community churches?
Full time. And so what that did was, first of all, it's always easier to be the first than to follow somebody everybody loved.
It is indeed. You set the tide, set the direction.
And so because I was the first guy in town, and it was only 12,000 people at the time. Right. Everybody knew who I was.
12,000 in the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not in the church.
Right. Did I say church?
No.
Oh, okay.
I just want to make clear about that.
Yeah. I try not to lie when I'm being recorded.
That's important.
So it was everybody in the community, every young person would look at me and say, oh, that's the guy that gets us. And I don't know if it was true or not, but it was a great opportunity to really move forward. And so God really blessed. I showed up. We had 7 young people in our first meeting. We had 160 2 months later.
Congratulations. Wow. That's the power. Huh? And was it mostly by word of mouth and folks, those 7 bringing 7, so to speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was God he was just doing something special. It was just a unique time.
How long did you stay in that position?
I stayed there for 7 years.
Okay. Wow. Great. And what happened next?
Well, so in the midst of that journey, I was licensed. My ministerial license was through an organization that has a great ability to take anybody who's having any success and give them so much responsibility they can't be successful. Oh. And so I was 21, 22 years old. And they came along and said, hey, we recognize what God's doing with you in youth ministry. So why don't we give you 8 states?
Wow.
And my ego thought, that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
But it really kind of plateaued the growth of the youth ministry. But what it did do is it gave me platform and opportunity to really understand what my giftings and my calling was.
Right.
And so I was able to, I discovered through that, I'm more of an evangelist than I am a pastor. I was able to begin my speaking ministry. And so I did that for several years. And then at the nudging of the Lord, I started I started traveling and speaking full time as a speaker and an author in 1997.
Wow. No, so was that about the same time that Groundwire was established?
The parent organization is called Champion Ministries, and that's when Champion Ministries began.
Okay.
And
got it. And that was your founding, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Right. And what was the mission statement of Champion Ministries at the time?
The mission statement was, we exist to, oh man, you're making me get historical, Brent. You're messing me up.
Well, if you can remember the one when you were 14, right?
Well, that was 3 words though. That was 3 words. I had a bigger vocabulary when I was 27.
There you go.
So no, it was really about introducing every young person that we possibly could to an intimate relationship with Christ. So it was both discipleship, but it was both evangelism, but it was also discipleship through spiritual disciplines. How do I connect with God? Really teaching young people how to do that. Yeah.
What'd you say is kind of your secret sauce? What is it that has really made that difference going from that 7 to 170 and, obviously the thousands of millennials, as we said in the opening, that you brought to Christ? Is it technology? Is it the message? Is it being humble? Is it being vulnerable? All of the above? What would you say is kind of the key driving force of your success over the years?
I think that one of the things that has really positioned us and positioned me to receive some of the things that the Lord really wants to bless us with or use us for is really that humility. Scripture says that God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble.
That's right.
And one of the things I learned when I was traveling and doing a lot of speaking at music festivals is if you go to the B and C stages, sometimes the musicians are better than they are on the A stage. But the attitude on the A stage was always grateful and humble. And it wasn't, we don't belong here. We're just so grateful that God uses us. You go to B and C stage and they just loved to tell you about themselves. And they thought that they were better than everybody was recognizing them to be. A stage, everybody was kind of humbled by the success that they'd had. And I think that's,
and you observed that basically practicing that. And was that something you learned at a fairly early age? And was it something that you did, back in those teenage years and certainly applied when you were in Colorado?
I think that for me, I think for most of us, there's something inside of us when we're trying to climb the ladder, when we want to be recognized. We want people to recognize our gifting and our calling, and we want them to acknowledge us and build us up. And it's,
I think males in particular, right? It's love and respect, right? Women are seeking love, men are seeking respect.
But there were a couple moments in my life where I was brought to a humble place where I was truly asking the question, God, I don't know how. And out of that, I really saw a lot of expansion and growth, because when I thought I knew what I was doing and all I cared about was how people perceived me, my mask was polished and I was smooth.
Right.
And I just thought my gifting will make a way. And then I got to a place where I realized I really don't know how to do it. And when my heart was humbled, that's when God said, okay, now I can really begin to use you. So to back up a little bit, my last church before I came to Colorado, I almost quit youth ministry.
Wow.
Because I took a youth ministry from 6 to 20 and then way back down to 4. And it made me question, man, maybe I missed my calling.
Yeah.
And then, stepped into this place in Colorado and I said, God, I'll give you one more shot. But if this place doesn't work, I know that I missed you. And so it was out of that humility that I sought the Lord differently, that I positioned myself differently. And I also experienced that in the ministry that I'm running now.
So when you go back to that 6 to 20 to 4 experience, were you more prideful? Do you kind of draw a correlation there, or were there other things that were going on that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, when I went from 6 to 20, it's silly, as even 20 doesn't seem like a big number, but in the circles where I was running, it was the growth and the momentum that had everybody's attention.
To start with.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it was 20 in a church that probably was running 60. So it was different. And so there was some pride there, and I was being asked to lead different things, and I've struggled with pride my whole life in regard to that. But what's interesting is now that I'm in this place where we are probably the most effective and efficient domestic evangelistic organization that I'm aware of, I am so humble. And I know that seems weird, but Moses said it, so I can say it. And the reason I say I'm humble is because I know this is God doing something very special.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is we're taking steps every day to be as in step with him and as obedient to him as we can.
I mentioned just before we started the podcast that your name came up in a recent conversation with another CEO, Todd Stewart, the president and CEO of Gulfwind International, very successful company down on the Houston coast. I think they've got about $150 million in sales, about 170 people. And he's just such an incredible person. And he'd just come back from Germany where he'd done some training with his son about really just learning how to take this city approach and really new ways in which to bring the ministry to youth. And I had said, you and I had a brief conversation and you were on the docket to have our podcast. And I was so impressed the first time we talked, Sean, about, what Groundwire does and how you do it. Give us a little bit of an overview of kind of the uniqueness of your ministry and why it's working.
Yeah, I would love to. Let me kind of tell you how we got here. So I was traveling and speaking full time, and I was getting every platform. This
was under Champion, right?
Yes,
back in the day.
And I was getting every platform that you'd want. I mean, I was getting the music festivals where I was the guy before the main speaker, and so I was getting 25,000 people a night that I was getting to share Jesus with.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of pride. I was patting myself on the back. My joke now is almost I was looking up to heaven and say, God, if you stick with me, I might be able to make something.
I'm going to take you places.
Yeah. I mean, there was maybe not quite that extreme, but a little bit of that. And it was December, and I was looking back at the previous year, planning for the next year, and so I added up. I'd spoken to 150,000 students and thought that was pretty awesome, and I was pretty awesome. And 2 days later, I was deflated. Because I was reading a George Barna book, and all George Barna does is he talks about trends in our nation.
Yeah.
And the very first paragraph said there are 33 million teenagers in the United States.
Yeah,
and I compared 150,000 to 33 million. I was deflated. I was like, I realized my model of ministry wasn't going to meet the need. And so I began to pray. For 3 months, I wrestled with the Lord. I said, God, you're a creative genius and I'm an idiot. I don't know how to do this. How do we reach? And the heart of my question.
You had your Jacob moment, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah. The heart of my question was really, how do we reach a generation that runs away from us?
Yeah.
Not to us. Because the more I read in this Barna book, it talked about trends. They're running away from the church. They plug their ears every time we speak truth. They're saying, that's your truth. It's not my truth.
Yeah.
And so for 3 months, I wrestled with the Lord and realized the invitation model I'd been using doesn't work. I was inviting people to come to my church, my camp, my conference, and they were saying, you know what, I'm too busy.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was at the end of it that I read one statistic that really shaped us. And that statistic was simply 97% of the students in the nation at that time listened to the radio at least 5 times a week.
Isn't that something? Wow.
And I thought, I can't get 97% to come where I am.
That's right.
Why don't we go where they are? So we started in ministry on traditional media. We started TV, radio, billboard. We weren't doing 30 minutes. We were doing 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And so God really.
And what was the message there?
Really, it was, hey, God's thinking about you right now. I mean, whatever it was. I mean, it was, we did hundreds and hundreds of commercials. And we were buying time on alternative rock stations, hip hop stations, country stations. We were buying time on FX, Comedy Central, MTV. We were going where they were, and we were sharing Jesus, and it was working, and we were having fun. But we took another change, and this is what really has accelerated our growth. And one of my friends in Seattle, one of the things he says about us is he said, the thing he appreciates the most is we pivot on the pivot. what he says is that most organizations, even churches, they make one innovation and it works. And so they lock in for a 20-year period.
Right.
And by the end of the 20 years, they've lost momentum.
They milk it for as long as they can, and then the cow goes dry.
Yeah. Well, what we started to do about 3 years ago was we started to measure everything and trust the data.
Awesome.
And so what we do now is we leverage the most powerful marketing tool in the world, somebody's cell phone. Yeah. And we interrupt young people, millennials and Gen Z, with 15 and 30-second commercials that are produced in Hollywood that basically say the messaging is when life hurts, Jesus cares. And it invites them into a conversation where we're the only organization in the world that I'm aware of that 24 hours a day, we have live coaches available. And so somebody logs in and says, hey, my life hurts. And doesn't feel like where's God in the midst of this? And our coaches walk them through conversation to help them understand God does love you, has a plan for your life, but it begins when you begin a relationship with him.
Fantastic. How many coaches do you have?
We have about 720 right now, all over the world, that give us volunteers, that give us 2 to 4 hours a week. Yeah. And I mean, there's always.
And they go through training. Is that kind of part of what you do? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And these are ads, right? That are run on a cell phone.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's terrific. And how long have you been doing that? And what do you think the reach has been? Or you're measuring it, right? So you know how many folks you've reached.
Well, we shifted from traditional media to digital media 100% in January of 2017.
Right.
And that's really when we began to see the growth.
Yeah.
And so just to kind of give you a little bit of highlight, in 2017, we saw 17 people a day say, I need a relationship with Jesus, which is a great number. George Barna said the average church in the U.S. only sees one a year.
Wow.
And so we were thrilled with 17. Well, it's continued to grow. So in 2018, that 17 a day was in 2016. In 2017, it grew to 77 a day. And in 2018, last year, it was 123 a day.
Oh, my goodness.
And since April 10th, we've been averaging 300 people a day say, I need a relationship with Christ.
God bless you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So they click and basically are connected to someone they can have a direct conversation with. And is it text or is it actually voice?
No, it's all text and instant message.
Yeah.
Because millennials
that's what they want to do.
Right. Yeah. They don't pick up the phone and put it to their ear.
Any of my millennial children to use the phone if their life depended on it to make a call.
I can't tell you how many parents have told me I'm so frustrated. I call my kid and by the time I'm done leaving my voice message, they text me and say, what do you want? We just want to pick up the phone is all we want.
Wow. And what's the culmination of it? Do they have an opportunity to get materials or to speak to someone afterwards? How does that work?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just share with you that our numbers are so unbelievable that we had to get them validated by a company that this is what they do. Because we had people who say, I want to believe you. I just don't know if I can.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that
300 a day, that's what, 100,000 a year?
We're on track. Right? We just topped 53,000 commitments to Christ for the year.
Fantastic.
And if we stay on pace of what we've done the last several months, we'll hit 94,000, I think. Wow. But I think we'll get to 100. That's the goal for the year.
Fantastic.
So you
brought an outside agency in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the things it did is it showed us that on the back end that this year in the first 6 months of the year, we have had 26.5% of the people who make a profession of faith give us their cell phone number. Which is a great number.
Yeah.
I mean, and so what we're able to do, we say we are not going to sell it. We're not going to give it away. All we're going to do is send you content that helps you better understand how to have an amazing relationship with Jesus. And so about 25% of them do that. And then we have tools that we send them. And because we couldn't get them to open emails because the younger generations do emails differently, but they open their texts.
Yeah.
So everything we do is video driven. So we shoot video to them once they come to faith the first 7 days. And then after that, every 2 weeks after that.
Yeah. So ongoing connections. Fantastic. And you mentioned these 700 folks. They're mostly volunteers. Do you have full-time staff as well?
Yes, we have 6 staff.
Okay. And you're organized as a nonprofit, I take it? Or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great. Gosh, what a terrific, what other kind, I'm interested in your KPIs, because so many of our successful CEOs, will also say metrics is what it's all about. What else do you measure?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking right now at our 6-month KPI or our 6-month impact report, which what it does is it measured our top 5 or 6 categories for the first 6 months of the year and then compared it to all 12 months of last year. So in the first 6 months of the year, our commercials, the ones, not if you go look at 16 commercials on our website, that doesn't measure this, but we paid to see 38,158,329 commercials shared with people. In the first 6 months of the year, we had 549,568 visits to the website.
Great.
We had 64,617 one-on-one conversations about Christ, with 36,922 people making a profession of faith at an all-in cost of $23.24.
Wow. Per person.
Per person, yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, those are pretty darn good KPIs. Congratulations on that, Sean. That's terrific. So, what do you do daily to kind of stay close to God? And, do you have daily devotionals? Do you, pray with your team? Tell us a little bit about kind of how you interact on a daily basis and ensuring that, His will, not mine, be done. Yeah.
Well, I think the key for every person is, your one-on-one quiet time.
Yeah.
We culturally have tried to get away from that. We think that there's a shortcut, or we think we're too busy. I don't believe there's anything that you can do. So every morning when I'm home, I start, in my chair, reading scripture.
Yep.
And other people are going to be very different than me, but I've never been a fan of devotionals because even though what's funny is I've written devotional books, but I've never liked them for myself because I always kind of wanted to say, God, what do you want to share with me? Speak to me. I don't necessarily need to hear it from somebody else. So that's where the day always starts for me.
Yeah.
But as a team, we do at 8 o'clock in the morning, every morning, we gather together and we pray together as a team. One of our challenges, as you can imagine, is our goal is, how do we take the numbers from yesterday and make sure that we're not focused on numbers, but on souls and on individuals and on stories? And so that's something that we pray about regularly, is God, remind us about that individual who was about ready to take their life until you interrupted them with one of our commercials and they came and gave their life to Christ.
So fantastic. I love it. And you mentioned earlier on about it's about reinventing yourself. You've certainly done this as you move from traditional media now to obviously social media and advertising via cell phones. What's next? What do you see coming, or how do you stay in touch with that and, kind of stay one step ahead, with regards to, continue to reach out to people? Are you seeing trends today among, the Generation Z and those that are following behind them in terms of how we may reach people differently?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to media, one of the things I love about digital versus traditional is you can test everything cheaply.
That's
so
right.
when we were doing TV, you'd have to invest $5,000 to know whether a TV commercial is effective.
Right.
Here, I can put a new commercial on our outlets and know within $50, $100 if it's going to work.
Do an A/B test and you get your results right away.
Right. And so we do that a lot. So let me give you one example. We test everything. And so your question is dangerous for me because you say, how do you know what's coming? Because we don't. Because the reality is, if we knew what was coming, we would get there before we should.
That's true. There's been a lot of companies that have done that in the past and have not been successful.
Yeah. So we do a couple things. One of the things we do is we take 10% of what we spend on marketing and we look for new platforms and new messages. So we've tested platforms that we know how they'll perform, but they just aren't as good as our top 2 platforms. So we don't spend a whole lot of money there.
Right.
But if something changes, we can go back, or we're looking for the next great platform. But to give you one real practical example, on April 10th, our numbers increased dramatically. We jumped from 160 people a day coming to Christ to 300.
Whoa.
And I
what did you do differently then?
That's exactly what it was. I went into Jameson. I said, "Hey, Jameson, what did you change?"
Yeah.
And he said, I reformatted one of our commercials and I did 3 things to it. He said, the first thing I did is most commercials are shot horizontally for TV.
Right.
But 93% of the people who see our content see it on their phone.
That's right.
So we format it to vertical. Second thing is, he said, I shifted it from a 30-second to a 15-second. And he said, the third thing I did, I read last week a statistic that said that 84% of all people who watch video content on their phone do it without audio because they don't want to disturb anybody.
That's right.
And so he went back and he
put captions on it.
Yeah, he put captions on it. And so those three things, it took one of our commercials performing at, now this is, I said our all-in costs are $23.24. That's every salary, software, everything we do.
Right.
But if you just take pure marketing costs, we average about $12 to $14. And so he came back and he said this one commercial that was performing at about $14 per commitment to Christ, he said it dropped it to $5.33.
Oh my goodness.
Because he made those. So we continue to look for those innovations, and we test everything. And sometimes we think we know what's going to work, and sometimes it doesn't. So we just keep testing and moving.
Is Jameson a millennial himself?
He is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Well, it takes one to really know one. And of course, being able to really understand the medium in which things are being built. So that's a very good hint. I guess as these things change and we move maybe to virtual reality or, things in our eyeglasses, there'll probably be additional things that we need to take a look at. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been a terrific conversation, Sean, and gosh, we're almost out of time, but, I want to ask you a question. It's a little bit off beat from where we've been before, but, we usually ask our CEO participants kind of what career and life advice, but I'd love to maybe just have you talk about someone who maybe be inspired with regards to, doing evangelical work or like me, maybe 2 or 3 years ago before I joined C12, which is, a peer advisory organization for men that have a Christian faith. If they want to do something evangelical, but maybe they're a little shy or they don't have the courage, unlike you who knew what he wanted to do from the very beginning, what advice would you give to someone who maybe has a great story or wants to be able to touch people in different ways? How do you think about that, and what are the kind of steps someone would take if they wanted to do that in their life today?
Unfortunately, all my answers are true, but they're simplistic.
Yeah.
Because, Christianity is not hard. It just takes discipline. It's not complicated. And so, I think the first thing, of course, always starts with knowing who you are. And that starts with connecting with Christ. And it means laying down your dreams, your desires. I'm reading a book right now written by a pretty successful businessman in Houston. It's called Sacred Pace. And one of the things he was talking about is when it comes to hearing the Lord about what he wants you to do, the wording he used really spoke to me. He said, you have to get to a place where you're approaching God in neutral. You're not praying, trying to get him to agree with you. You're not trying to change his opinion, or you're not hearing it through the lens of what you want.
Right.
You're just simply saying, God, I just want what you want.
Yeah.
And I also think that I believe that there has to be a high risk tolerance when it comes to faith.
Right.
Because if you are risk adverse,
you'll never do it.
You won't. You will not step away from your comfort zone at all.
That's
so
right.
One of my favorite sayings is, life is too short to waste and eternity is too long to ignore. And so, we have the eternal opportunity every day to invest in things that matter, to love people well, to pray aggressive prayers. But it means drawing near to him. It means saying no to our desires and say, God, what we want is just what you want.
Right.
And being willing, every great hike starts with the first step. And I found more people that talk about where they want to go that won't take the first step to get there.
Get out there, try it out, make mistakes, be humble, right?
Yeah.
But just keep trying, keep moving forward. Sean Dunn, founder and CEO of Groundwire, and as well as its mother organization, Champion. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office and what you've done for God. Just so incredibly fantastic. Really enjoyed hearing all of it today.
Thank you, Brent. Appreciate it. It was great being with you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.